Thank you for tuning in to Medical Imaging Matters, a podcast from AHRA, the Association for Medical Imaging Management. My name is Jason Newmark, and I am the Executive Director for AHRA and your host. I am very excited for today's episode, where we're going to hear from two very special AHRA friends regarding their perspectives on leadership and the importance of purposefully and actively developing, supporting, and sustaining strong cultures within your teams. The two will also remind us that leading is a privilege, and it is earned every day by your actions as a leader and your true commitment to your team members. Our guests today are Josh Block, the president of Block Imaging, a second-generation family business focused on medical imaging equipment, services, and mobile solutions, and a father of two and a true leadership advocate. And Bill Algee, Director of Imaging Services at Columbus Regional Hospital in Columbus, Indiana, a past AHRA president, a co-host of his own podcast, Ages of Rock, for those of you who enjoy rock and roll, and a recently made new grandfather. So, on with the show. Well, hey guys, it's great to have one of my best buddies, Bill Algee, on today, as well as another really good friend and colleague, Josh Block. Today, we're going to talk a lot about leadership and culture and sort of the importance of that in the roles of our members, our listeners, you name it, just in every single day. Obviously, we're in a very interesting socio-political economic times. I think it's very interesting being a healthcare administrator in any capacity, whatever service line, and finding strong leaders and understanding what it means to be a leader it could never be, or let's say, has never been more important. And I think also driving a culture where people are in something together, they believe in something together and what they can accomplish together. And on paper, you guys will agree, it sounds easy, and it's not so easy. And I think people get caught up sometimes and say, well, I don't have a title, I can't be a leader. And I'm sure we'll hear from you guys that that's not the case. You can be a leader at any level at any given moment. But I'd love us to dive in and start to really think about some of your perspectives on leadership and creating culture and sustaining culture, just from both of your unique perspectives and experiences. Maybe Josh, we'll start with you, pick you first. Maybe just talk high level, like how you see leadership, how you define leadership, and sort of how that drives culture sort of in your company and just in overall.
Sure. No, it's great to be with you guys. Good to see you, Bill, and great to see you again, Jason. Is from a leadership perspective, it's an art. It's complex, extremely layered. And after leading for all these years and looking back, I feel like for me, there are three E's that stand out as one, that we as leaders equip, is that we're offering tools, that we as leaders encourage, that we're bringing courage to people's lives and to people's work. And then when we do that, when we offer tools and when we offer courage, we actually empower people and it creates opportunity for them. And so we're really equipping, encouraging, empowering people to move an organization and to move a team from here to there. That's really what has probably felt the most poignant for me in defining leadership in this season.
I love that. The three E's. I'm going to steal that from you shamelessly, right? Equip, empower, and engage, right? All right. Equip, engage, empower. I should put it in your order. I think that's great. Bill, thoughts on you in terms of when you think about defining leadership or thoughts? Does that resonate with you?
Oh, absolutely. I think it, and it morphs over time. I think, trying to stay true to those three elements, as you have different generations come through, as your workforce changes and the generations change, and society and the impacts that it has on the work that we do, and how you can change at a pace that's really hard to keep up with sometimes. And I think the last, since COVID, basically, the pace of change has been pretty rampant. I mean, with trying to find staff is a challenge. Trying to recruit staff is a challenge. Trying to maintain staff. So there's a lot of different aspects of it for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. So teeing off from that, I mean, obviously, as we talk about that being a leader is important, but Josh, maybe we talk about how leading can be, we can talk about this in many different ways, and people can use that phrase easily. I'm a leader, but leading what? I think at the end of the day, culture is key, right? Creating an environment where people can succeed together. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? I know that's something that's been hot in your posts as of late, things we've talked about in the past, but I love your idea, vision around culture and creating that culture.
Yeah, I mean, every organization has a culture, and in some organizations it's accidental and some it's intentional. And so for me, I just really believe that culture is formative to an organization, and it's shaped by everything that we do and say as leaders, everything that we embody ourselves, everything we invite people into, everything that we don't allow to happen in our organization. And we all know things that if they were to happen in our organization, that it would be the end of someone's time, right? Like these are things that will not be tolerated. And so all of those things, from the things we're inviting people into to the things we're embodying to the things we won't tolerate, are all shaping the culture or the ecosphere that we lead as organizational leaders.
Right. And along those lines, do you have thoughts or tips about how to help set that culture, or somebody who maybe is new into leadership and thinking about that, or new to an organization where they have a vision of culture that may be a little different than the organization's culture, or their department might have a different vision of culture, and how does it fit into the overall, system?
Yeah, within a hospital, there are lots and lots of micro cultures within a larger macro culture that might be a hospital, and then within a larger hospital system culture, right? And so it's our responsibility to just shape the culture that we're responsible for. So that might be imaging, or that might be clinical engineering, or that might be cardiology, is regardless of where you are in the organization, it's our responsibility to shape the culture that is in our care. And we all know that if you walk from one department to the next, you could feel a culture change, right? Oh, over in oncology, or oh, every time that I go over to surgery, and you can tell that there's a certain culture there. And I bet anything that it's driven by a leader who's again inviting, embodying, and not tolerating certain things. And that's why their culture is either really healthy or maybe really toxic, right?
Yeah,
I think that
I totally agree.
happens within the interdepartmentally as well. As you have different leaders, lead techs, whatever, in a modality, in imaging especially, then you can definitely have a group of people that are hitting on all cylinders and everything's going well, and you're going down this path, and you have another group of people that are just struggling. Like there are things they can't, they're struggling with the culture, trying to figure out how do I tell somebody that I really don't appreciate that they said this or whatever. And sometimes it's being able to support them and go, look, let's have a conversation about it, and let me help equip you with some tools to go out and have that conversation. But you have to have them have that conversation. And I think sometimes as leaders, we feel like we have to have that conversation. And sometimes the best thing for us to do is get out of the way and let
Yeah.
them have the conversation. And it's hard. It's hard to sometimes just realize that that's not my spot. My spot is to help cultivate that with the next generation of leaders and those kind of things.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah. Bill, I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to ask the two of you this, and either one of you can jump in. I think that happens a lot, right? You go to an organization and someone hands you and says, here's our culture. Or you go to orientation and someone says, welcome to the organization. These are our values. But they haven't asked you what your values are, or translated what does that value mean to you individually. Not that everyone's going to have it all, do things, totally separately and distinctly, but everyone's going to have a different perspective of what certain words mean and how those go together. So I like, Bill, when you were mentioning like talking to the group and having them weigh in. And as you're trying to set culture, is that something that you guys have used, where I want to drive at? And, Josh, in your organization, sort of, it's your company, or Bill, in the various hospital roles you've had, sort of how you set that culture, or reset, right? Sort of taking a pause post COVID and said, okay, who are we? And the words on the wall that are there for us, are they the ones we developed? Or what do they mean to us? Like localizing those down to our level. But maybe you guys can speak to that if I'm making myself clear.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we want to be really, really public with our values. And like when someone comes into our organization, that they see it on our website, they feel it when they walk in the door, they experience it when they interview, because ultimately our organizational identity, which is our mission and our values and what we call our thriving mindsets, we really want those to operate as a magnet, that they draw people who align. It's not going to be perfect alignment, but at the end of the day, they see and they hear it and they see either that's who I am or that's who I want to be. And then we know what happens on the other side of a magnet, right? Is that if you don't believe that people matter and you're not into honor, integrity, growth together, if those are not things that you want to be when you grow up, this would not be a great organization for you to thrive in or to move us forward. What about you, Bill?
Yeah, same thing. And I think as time has changed and passed, culture in general, from, as we hire different age groups right now, it's a big challenge because, you know, um, one of the things I would say is, there was a period of time where you could hire somebody and they would just take whatever position that they want. Right now, people are coming into the work environment and they want to work these hours, these days, whatever, which is fine, but is that going to fit with everybody else? And
Yeah.
I think sometimes that's something that I call it the me thing. You kind of have that me thing going on. Well, we're not a me, we're a team, we're a group. We all, if somebody in the group isn't functioning as a we, then we've got a little challenge there. So I think that's something we try to reinforce. Um, but it's interesting to hear people tell you about your culture. So I'll give you an example. We have a cultural model here at our organization called The Way We Care. And I teach that in new employee orientation every 2 weeks. We do new employee orientation every 2 weeks. In every class, I've been doing it for about 2 years now. In every class except for one that I've done in 2 years, we've had people returning to our system. And I asked them why you've decided to return, and every one of them says it's the culture.
Yeah.
And so I asked them in that room, tell me what that means, and they'll tell you it's different here because we listen to our staff. We try to, it isn't everything. We can't put everything in place that people ask for, but it's those kind of things, and it's that holding each other accountable piece. That's the other piece, and I think that sitting through that and hearing people come back for those reasons, that to me, I get goosebumps every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It reminds me, Bill, it makes me think about like culture is like air quality. That if you went and you were in a room and you could breathe really well and it was well lit and communication was strong, and then you went to another room that was, the fire alarm was going off and there was smoke and you couldn't breathe very well, and then you go back to the room where it's really easy to breathe, and somebody says, well, why did you leave that room to come to this one? And you're like, well, pretty much everything about it, right? I can thrive here, I can't thrive there. And so, yeah, I always think about like the conditions of air quality in relation to the health of a culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it can be
And you guys
challenging.
also
It
go
can
ahead, Bill, sorry.
fluctuate throughout the day. I mean, literally, in some of the things that we have going on. I mean, it's all the challenges that we have with staffing and finding staff, that kind of stuff. You have to make sure that when you're going through that interview process, you're bringing the right person into the group.
Sure.
And the ability to recognize that this is not working out anymore, and having that conversation to say, look, this is not working out anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crucial.
That's probably the hardest thing as a leader ever to do, right? Is when you realize that people say oftentimes, oh, leadership didn't address so and so, they didn't do that. It's hard. These are real people, right? And you're trying to be understanding of who they are and where they're coming from. And especially, Bill, you and I have talked about this in the past. When you're a new leader coming in, you might be coming in and you're managing people that are several years older. They have a lot more experience. They've been around for a long time. They may have been part of the institution, and suddenly you're watching them and say, listen, maybe the culture that you're driving isn't what we want to be anymore. And having that difficult conversation is not easy, right? I think many leaders put it off or they push it off, right? It's something that I was challenged with a ton early on in my career. I was going to ask you guys about that too. So Josh, you mentioned a lot. I think it's like a question asking culture. I think I've heard you say you really promote wanting your team members to feel that they can speak up. And that's easy to say. And it sounds great on the billboards. Oh, we let all of our staff and we hear them. But can you speak to how you do that? Because I have heard that from the people that work with you or on your team, that there really is a culture there where it really feels like everyone can be a leader and my voice actually matters. Then maybe Bill, you can piggyback. But Josh, I'd love to hear that.
Yeah. So as Bill talked about onboarding, we do what we call Block U, so Block University. And so when you start, you join the organization. We talk about all sorts of things from culture and history and values, but we also just at the end have time carved aside for questions. And then we have company-wide meeting every third Thursday in the afternoon. And that also has people can either ask anonymously on a chat, or they can write on a question card. And what you do is like you're setting time aside and you're expectant that there will be questions. And actually, over in my office, I don't know if you can see that stack in the basket, there's 500 cards there. These are questions that have been written on the cards over the course of years, and it does so much. One, it gives people context, tears down the wall between leaders and the team. And ultimately, it shares with us what's on the minds of the team. This last meeting, I had 2 questions in our last meeting last Thursday about vending machines in the office. Never gotten the question before. And while somebody might say it's kind of small, it's an opportunity to know as we grow, what the team is thinking about. And so we really love that side of questions, which allow for context, which then allow for better questions, and everybody learns and grows.
Yeah.
That's a great
Bill,
idea. I just wrote that
yeah.
down, by the way.
Yes, shamelessly steal that one, right? I'm like, oh
Shamelessly
goodness,
stealing that
I need
one.
to do that better. Right.
I,
But Bill,
I want, I want
yeah,
people to know, like, I care what you think. I care what you're curious about. You can ask anything. And I think one of the things that so many people think is like these leaders are holding all this information back from us. And so just saying, you can ask anything that you want, and we're going to do our best to articulate what we think about that. Sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes the answer is no, sometimes the answer, I think there are a couple of questions that, hey, we're going to think about this one and circle back with you. But I really think, even Bill, you've talked a couple times about some of the labor challenges, and the people know there's a labor challenge, and the leaders know there's a labor challenge, but for some reason everybody's uncomfortable talking about it. And so this stress and pressure builds, and rather than looking at our people and just saying, for us in our world, there's a shortage of field service engineers. And so we're going to talk about it. We know that there's a shortage. The average field service engineer is on the second half of their career, that's for sure. And so then we can actually come together, we can acknowledge the issue, and then we have just begun our first cohort of building 6 field service engineers. And so we can actually go upstream and bring a solution to the problem rather than just complaining about it. And so that's what I think of, Bill, like this issue that you're talking about is that nobody wants to talk about it. It's just this, if it, maybe the problem will get smaller if we just tuck it under the rug. And yet we all know that doesn't really work, and it just builds pressure in the organization.
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
Yep.
Well, do you guys ever just piggybacking off a little bit of people wondering about leadership versus what the staff are thinking? One of the things I used to always laugh about in my organization was they. Everyone would say, well, they don't understand. And I'd be looking around the room, I'm like, who are we talking about? Who's they? So I actually had a sign for a little while. I'd wear it. It said, I am they. I was like, look, I'm the they. And they're like, no, it's not you. But I was like, trust me. At first, I don't know who we're talking about. But secondarily, I'm convinced that whoever you're thinking of at the top is not worrying about this right now, right? This is us to fix, us to dive into, to go. But I also like what you said that sometimes, the questions may not be, you never know what you're going to get in those questions, and you do your best to answer them. And yes, I can solve some I can't, but the key is we heard you, right?
Yeah.
We heard you, we're acknowledging it, we understand where you're coming from. Some of the things we might not be able to resolve, but we go forth. And so Bill, do you have those things? I'm trying to think, as when you stepped into your role, and I know you kind of escalated up into the director role over the last several years, are there things that you're thinking about that if you had your younger self or someone else that was sitting there, you'd say, listen, you're coming in as a new leader, we're seeing great things for you. Are there things you wish you'd known or tips you would try to help them understand, sort of the tricks or the tips to sort of, connect well with the team and understand those elements?
Yeah, I think one of the things, and as we talk about, so organizationally in our department, we have leads in each area. So those are our future, hopefully our future leaders, right? Because I'm not getting any younger. For those of you that are watching this on video, can tell, But as we start talking about that, we're start building that next generation of leaders. We want them to be engaged. My former director, that I took the role over when he left. One of his theories was, keeping information is danger. Share the information, share it. You want to share it with your team. You want to get buy-in and that kind of stuff. The previous person to him didn't believe that. They believed they kept everything at their level. They didn't share things. It became a struggle at a lot of different times. And I think that's one of the things. I think that builds trust too. And I think that's what's really important. And the other thing I think is being able to say, made a mistake. I
Yeah.
goofed this up. I mean, we shouldn't have done that. I'll give you an example. We had a situation where we had a student that was going through our program, struggled a little bit, had some problems, ended up the last 6 months did really, really, really well. We had a job opening. We hired her. Um, the team was not happy that we hired her. They thought that she would just not going to make it. And as it turned out, we put on our leadership caps and said, I think we're going to be okay. And we were wrong. And we just went back to the team and went, we were wrong.
Yeah.
We're not perfect in every way, but based on the information we had and based on what we had seen, we really believed that she had
Yeah.
turned a page. And, because that happens, people go through and all of a sudden they're like, okay, I get it. The light bulb comes on, right? Um, but you have to take a risk sometimes. And sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. But I think the losing part of that is realizing that that's an opportunity to be vulnerable as a leader and say, look, I just totally screwed this up. I should have done this better,
Yeah.
or I need to think about that differently next time. So, I think that's part of leadership too. And that's part of culture. If you're going to admit that maybe this didn't go well, I think that's something else. People think that the leader has all the answers. Man, if that's what you think and you're listening to this, trust me, your leader does not have all the answers.
That's
I,
good.
I think these other two leaders on here will tell you exactly the same thing.
No, I think it's the apologizing and build a piece of like, hey, we believed in someone, we really hoped for them, and that ended up not being the right decision at the end. But might we be accused of a people who are believing in other people's growth and possibilities? And yeah, it just makes me think of I was preparing for today and just a couple of pitfalls that I see leaders struggling with. The first is the assumption that it's all about them, is that I have a new title, I have new responsibilities. What am I going to do versus asking what the people in the organization need? And the second is this belief that I need to know everything, which is kind of where this imposter syndrome is coming from. Is that someone asked me recently, like, well, what if you lead someone who you don't know what they do or how they do it? And I said, like, I get to do it every single day. We have 400 people in our organization who are doing all sorts of things that I couldn't within 10 lifetimes imagine doing. And that's why it's less about, and frankly, it's one of the challenges for a radiology manager sometimes is that within the hospital space, I was an MRI tech. And then because I showed up and because I was responsible and because I worked well with the team, I just got placed into a director of radiology leadership role. And I didn't get trained on leadership. I took classes for years to be an MRI tech, but leadership was just kind of an overnight thing. And so this idea that I have to know everything, and then the last pitfall is this like not knowing what they're after. So they don't really know the culture they want to build. And so what happens is you see things you don't want. And so you end up becoming like a red pen leader is I don't like this and I don't like this and I don't like this and I don't like this, as opposed to that magnet thing I talked about earlier. Is this is who we want to be when we grow up. If you want to be like this, come along. And if you don't, this probably isn't the place for you. But knowing what you're after as a leader is way more fun than chasing around what you're not after.
Josh, I really like that piece too. But I think you said it earlier, was just the idea that when people are coming to an organization, they know what they're coming into. Look, here's what we stand for. You have a choice. If you want to work for us, that's great. If you don't, that's great too. But when you come on board, this is who we are, right?
Sure.
And I also liked, I think one of you mentioned just being present. I mean, it was when you started off, but being purposely leading, like getting out and seeing people and walking around and trying to encourage that culture. So we used to say, leadership rounding used to be a big piece. And I'll share a side here, but we talked about doing leadership rounds during one of our big open forums. And our team said, I said to the staff, listen, we're going to have our leaders round. You want them, they want you. We can help you out in more ways. So when they're out, fill in the blank. Their intent is to come and find you doing things. And they
Right.
all said, what? Wrong. They said they're going to come out and tell us who did it wrong. Back to your red pen thing you mentioned, right? And it's funny because when I met with the leaders, we said, okay, we're going to round. And when you go out, your goal is to find people doing things. And what did they say? Wrong. And I said, oh my goodness, we have a total misalignment. Not misalignment. The staff think you're going to look for things they're doing wrong. You said you're going to look for things wrong. We have to have a hard stop. The goal is to find them doing things right. So you can say that's supporting our culture. That's fantastic. You're seeing the good. I mean, obviously, there's opportunities always to improve, but we had to flip it over, right? To create a different kind of culture. But that was the mindset that they had come from for years. You find them with the red pen doing things wrong. And I just find that so interesting when you flip that switch, the whole place changes because now people feel good about work, they're getting complimented, and it just feels a little bit more celebratory than the other side. But my point of all that, I think you guys would agree with, I'm hearing you say, is just that it really takes time and purpose to maintain that culture. It can't be something you just sit behind the scenes and watch, right?
Or
And it
you
can
can.
slip. Yeah, it can slip fast. Go ahead, Josh. Sorry.
No, I think culture, I mean, there's no such thing as maintaining culture in the first place, right? Culture is always evolving, it's always changing. And so that my idea came to mind when you were saying this rounding idea is I think you can find people doing something wrong. I think you can find people doing something right. And then you can also be curious about what are you doing here and creating a safe place that, hey, when I walk through the building, is there fear? Is there excitement? Like the idea, I want to walk through our building this afternoon and just say, what are you doing right now? And have them explain and say, why are you doing that? Oh, that's really cool. Like to actually get into their world and gain a clearer understanding of why we use this label on this package or why we're testing a part in this way is I think people love to even we'll take people on tours of our building and stop at a repair area and have them explain. People love to explain what they're doing all day long. And the last thing, and Bill, I'm curious what's on your mind is a friend of mine, Dr. Kurt Thompson, said, we all come into the world looking for someone looking for us. And so this idea of like, and I think of Bill, your new grandbaby, right? And out in Washington is like these were all someone's kid. They still are someone's kid. And this idea of just getting into the trenches and kind of understanding what are you doing and why are you doing that way? Wow, that's really cool. We could use that in other areas of the organization as whether it be looking for something good or bad. What's on my mind, Jason, is this idea of just even having a deeper understanding of what people are doing on our behalf in our organizations.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, as I like to walk out, and see my staff interacting with patients, the conversations they're having, is it, yes, we all have some kind of a patient experience score that we're looking for, or whatever, but I really want them to try to make a connection. That's really kind of, that's really what I'm looking for. And so I sometimes that can be challenging because people it becomes it's like a job, right? It becomes a job, and it's just
Yeah.
like the next thing in, and it really like, okay, sometimes we have to go around and remind people that that's your next one, but that's their first one,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So don't take that for granted. A book I read years ago, talked about a gentleman that uh went in and came in and had a CT scan, and when he left, he came in as a CT scan and left as a person with a brain tumor. Or no, sorry, pancreatic cancer. And so, we don't think about that when we're going through all of the stuff that we're doing. It's not just the next number, it's not just the next patient, it's a person, and how we treat them and how we take care of them is so important. And that culture makes that, if we're just rote and doing the box, checking the boxes, and we're not engaged truly with that patient, then we miss that piece. And I think
Yeah.
for me, that's a big thing. And another just quick example, when COVID occurred, that was like send everybody home, right? Everybody worked from home and had offices, stuff like that. And they came to us and they were like, okay, well, you need to start working from home for a while. I'm like, I can't do it. I can't have my staff sitting here being
Yeah, sure.
exposed and you tell me to work at home. I can't do that. I mean,
Yeah.
physically couldn't, so we took, we all worked a certain period of time at home, initially, but it was really about, I can't put my team at risk and then go, you can be at risk, but I can't be. No way. That's
It
not
was
how it works.
those moments, I mean, everything from a smile in the parking lot all the way to those like high stakes moments. I remember the same thing as we were asking our team to deliver portable x-rays around the nation to support facilities. And like, I went to our local hospital and delivered one with them to say like, hey, I'm comfortable. I'm not going to ask you to do something that I'm not willing to do. That's beautiful embodiment.
Right.
I think it was nice that they just said, hey, everybody, we just want to make sure everybody stay home for a week or two, and then we're going to come all back.
Sure.
And I think that was okay. But initial conversations everywhere across the country was, if you don't have a direct patient care thing, you shouldn't be in the building. It's like, no, I got
Yeah.
bodies, I got my people there. I'm not letting my people go.
Yeah. Well, I think it goes back overall. What you guys said is to really lead, you have to earn the trust and you have to earn the right to lead. Just because you have that title doesn't mean your team's going to follow you. And if they see you every day and you're listening and you're present and you're approachable, it makes it a lot more enjoyable for them and for you. And then you don't need a title, right? You become that leader because they want you to be. They lean on you. You're helping them resolve their issues. You're finding them doing things well. You're encouraging them to remember why they got into healthcare. And Bill, to your point, making those connections with the patient, right? That's why you went in. I assume that's why people went in to the healthcare world.
But I think the other thing, it also doesn't mean that everything they want is right. And you have to make sure that you can continue, as Josh was talking about earlier, continue to have those boundaries and understand this is where, we're okay in as long as we're in this sphere. When we start getting out there and it's way out there, then we have to go, okay, great idea, great theories. Let's kind of ring it back in a little bit. But I think giving people the opportunity to at least throw things on the wall to see if they stick is really, really important. Probably something we all need to do a little bit better of. I would say that, I'm sitting here saying that, and one of our next staff meetings, I think we're going to be throwing some stuff on the wall, so to speak, of course.
Yeah. So Josh, I know we're kind of, three of us could go on and on here, but I know I'd love to hear any more kind of just, summary thoughts or some things that you have just about creating that culture. I know your company recently got acquired by a much, much, much larger company. And watching from the outside, I was like, wow, are they going to lose what makes them special? And what I'm hearing from the folks I know there is absolutely not, which is great. So I don't know if you have any perspectives around that either, about managing through change or leading through change or trying to maintain that, or some tidbits that are good.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, so last Saturday was 2 years from the announcement of the acquisition. And so for us, I'm grateful for both Siemens Healthineers and Common Spirit and just their awareness of culture and their commitment to help us grow and sustain and even enhance our culture. And so yeah, it's been I mean, we've doubled in size in the last 2 years and continue to drive forward. And we play a part in serving a group of hospital systems that we never had the opportunity to serve before. So it's an incredible privilege. But yeah, overall, I'm thankful for the way that those organizations have stewarded our organization, especially. You just can't, to have your last name on a company and just all that represents and the reflection it is on our family is, I'm really proud and thankful of that. But ultimately, yeah, leadership is a privilege. It's a responsibility for sure. And I just a quick story as I wrap up is we had a team member who's actually stepping away from the organization. That she has some young kids. She's been with us about 20 years, and she told her kids this weekend that she had resigned and that she was going to be spending more time with them and those sorts of things. And they were upset. They were like, we love block imaging and you need to go back in there and get your job back. And she's telling the story just this morning, right before the meeting. And she's like, when we go in, we get a sucker at the front desk and Miss Allie gets us a gift from the prize box and whatever it is. But what a privilege it is to serve the people that we lead and ultimately to recognize, as I've shared in some other forums, is to recognize the impact that we make on the lives of families based on the culture that we create for our teams in our imaging departments.
Yeah, I think Josh, I hate to tell you this, but I think the list is long of people that would like to work for you.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not just saying that because we're on the call, but yeah, I think that having that legacy is important. We're an independent hospital and have maintained that independence for over 100 years. And so as you see a lot of other facilities getting gobbled up at a time where it's a lot of facilities are struggling, we are really bent on staying independent and because of the culture. Because
Sure.
when you are no longer independent, yes, you may have more dollars coming in, but your culture is going to be the culture of the mothership. It's not going to be the culture of your specific organization any longer, no matter what anybody says. I've heard from people before, it's like, oh, well, nothing's going to change. Yes, it is going to change. That's the whole purpose of somebody being purchased. They're going to change. And that usually happens. But you guys have done it, it's not happened there, which is great. But, it is a fear that we all have that are in smaller hospitals right now, especially with the climate of what's going on in healthcare. So
Yeah.
Definitely a challenge. It's something we have to fend off for sure.
Yeah. So let me ask you guys, any final comments you guys have or any final wrap ups? And in those wrap ups also, are there ways for listeners, if they want to reach out or connect with you guys with follow-up questions? Is it, what's the easiest way to reach? Maybe we can start with that. Is it easiest way to go through LinkedIn? Is that an easy way to go? Or I guess they can find your emails on the different areas. What would be the easiest way to connect with you guys?
I will make sure that my email address is in the bio. That's
Okay.
probably the best way. LinkedIn is there's an awful lot coming in through LinkedIn. And so
Yeah.
email's probably best. And so Bill can probably put his email in the bio as well. You guys all know how to find Bill. But leadership is not for everyone. It's not for the faint of heart, and because it's inherently involves people, there's complexity to it. Is that you can't put all the people in a spreadsheet. There's so many different needs and all that's going on, and so I just think for me, while there's no one size fits all. I'm in the process of writing a book and super grateful for AHRA's support over all these years, but launching the book in February of 2026. Really kind of sharing about some of the things that we've learned along the way in writing the block imaging story. But ultimately, I'd probably go back to Dr. Thompson's quote, which is, we all come into the world looking for someone looking for us. Is what does it look like to see people, to understand they have a life outside of work? What did their weekend look like over Memorial Day, whether they were on call or whether they were on the floor or whether they were at home? It's just seeing people for more than what they can do for us is something that is so formative in leadership.
I would agree.
I love that. Any thoughts from your end, Bill?
I don't think so. I think Josh summed it up pretty well.
Summed it up. I was going to say, I still think, sort of seeing people who they are, and it's just, I can wrap on this. I still love the story about how you guys connected.
First day at AHRA, I think 2006. So almost 20 years ago, was in Vegas at AHRA. My business card said 517-331-XXXX because I didn't even have a number yet, and they still printed my cards. So I remember having dinner with Bill Algee, didn't know the difference between an MRI and a hockey stick. And then fast forward 15 years or so later, meeting in San Antonio, and I shared at a spring conference. And it was a smaller conference, and I got in the elevator after speaking, and I was kind of at the end of the day, right during an NCAA tournament game, and Bill was just so kind to say how impactful and that it was one of the better sessions he had heard, and that was super inspiring in just my journey to begin not just leading and carrying a culture here, but to begin telling the story beyond these walls. So thanks, Bill.
You're very welcome. I'm the one that won that day, that's for sure, and today. So it's been a great day.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you guys. And as we said, there's so many angles and directions you can talk about leadership and culture, but I always value your opinions, Bill, just from your experience running that, in the roles you've been and working your way up from a tech to a director, and then our time as a leader of the association, and Josh, both obviously as a partner with AHRA, running your own company, and just all the time we spent together. I think listeners can gain a lot. And I know you guys both have a lot of resources, and you're always willing to take calls and help people out. So hoping people listen, they pick up a couple tips, and maybe just want to follow up with some of the questions they have with you guys directly. But yeah, it's been great. So I really, really appreciate it. Thanks for listening to Medical Imaging Matters, a podcast from AHRA, the Association for Medical Imaging Management. If you have enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. AHRA is proud to be the trusted association for medical imaging management professionals, offering career development programs, a comprehensive selection of educational conferences and seminars, networking opportunities, award-winning publications, the certified radiology CRA credential, and so much more. To discover all AHRA has to offer, visit our website at ahra.org. Until next time.